these meetings to end, and in all minutes, you should have an ending time,
There's no adjournment.
no adjournment time. And all minutes should have an adjournment time.
Subject to those changes, I would move to approve consent agenda items A, B, C, and D.
Okay, including the changes to the October 4th minutes. Okay?
I'll second that.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Moving right along. And this is you, I believe, Mr. Shoemaker, expenditure for pickup truck for utility services.
That's Ken.
Is that Kenny?
I can handle it. We put into the budget for this year, and the reason I was handling this is because I did some of the dealing with the dealers, and we put in the budget this year for a full-size pickup truck for utility services, and that's plan is to outfit it with a work truck with a compressor and some tools and racks, and we priced out a full-size Toyota Tundra, a large motor towing package.
I have to
We
say, I
also-
thought this was an excellent price for a fully loaded Tundra.
Yeah, well, we did.
Well,
We,
not, maybe
Tundra.
not fully loaded, but.
Not at Ford or GM?
No.
You buying Jack trucks?
I'm buying resale value and reliability is what I'm buying.
Then you'd be
Larry,
buying 150.
I just question why we went to Naples, there's nobody
That's
in
the
Fort
case, you
Myers
buy
we
them
could
at
deal with.
150.
There is, we went to Auto Nation and their price was $34,305, so about a $1,600 difference.
Okay, I just wanted
So-
to know why.
And that was why, and one of the things is too, is we do have some older Ford trucks, and we also have been using some of those four-wheelers, and I may come in later depending on the budget and things with utilities, but I'm trying to phase those out also. And also with our concept of mobile offices, so to speak, when we put a public works manager and everyone's in a truck or everyone's out in the field working, especially in different areas, we're tight on vehicles. And I'm hoping to use one of our smaller trucks for one of those and literally phase out those gators because they aren't street legal. And we are getting more and more complaints from residents, Hampton Park in particular, Pinecrest, to those vehicles going up and down their streets, and they just don't like them coming into the community.
What's the complaint? What's the issue?
They just don't like
Aesthetically,
this.
they don't like?
Yeah, well, they just, don't like them running up and down, and sometimes they're traversing neighborhoods to go through to another one, and they've asked, are you working in here? No, we're just we go around on Gateway Boulevard, like I said, they're not street legal. 5-10 years ago, they worked out great. As you people know, the speeds on Gateway and Griffin, it just, to me, it's a safety
It's
factor
gonna get worse.
for the staff.
Our
and the
community
business.
loves seeing them because that means they're getting something done in there. So
Yeah.
they can drive in Gateway Greens all they want.
And I do like, I think you put some lights and stuff on some of the existing trucks.
Oh, yeah, we have all the safety equipment.
Looks
lights on.
really good.
Yeah. Okay, do we have a motion for Mr. Shoemaker for his pickup truck?
I'm serious about wanting to buy American as a resident. It's my money. Just
Well,
throwing that out there.
I don't think it is actually your money, Bob.
I don't pay it. Pay it.
Yeah, not for the utility fund.
Darn, I still think you should do it. Buy American. Buy American.
Sorry, Bob, but.
Buy American.
I like the spirit. Mr. Gifford just came back from Mr. Trump's rally yesterday.
I wish I had, but I didn't.
He's still on that roll.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second.
I'll second.
Okay,
Did you price out a Ford or Chevrolet truck?
No, sir, I didn't.
oh,
And, I looked ballpark pricing, but reliability issue and resale value. And also the Toyotas are made in the United States, they aren't made in
Yeah, I mean-
Japan.
The resale of the 150 is fabulous.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not historically accurate.
We have a motion in
Wait,
this, go ahead.
What are the chances are you checking out a Ford or Chevy, as Mr. Guy suggests?
Yeah,
I'm
we could
just-
do it.
I mean, you got
I
Toyota Fords
looked-
now, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was shut down on the Ford or Chevy, but I looked, and one comparable to Toyota was more money. Now, I didn't go and actually get with a dealer, but the retail on was like 10,000 more. So, they're more capable. His
Okay.
defense.
I don't like Toyota.
Well, as a proud Toyota Tundra owner, it's a workhorse. It's a workhorse.
So it's a 150?
So, we have own one American and one foreign.
Didn't have any point.
So, I'll just call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There you go.
You gotta get my ballot back.
Too late.
And Bob, I agree with you. On most things, I'm Buy American. But this particular truck is a workhorse truck.
It's made in Tennessee.
Yeah, it is made in this country.
It's
There you
actually
go.
made in Texas, but
Well, it make it in Tennessee too.
Well, if you wanna break it down and go to the tier 1, tier 2s, and tier 3s, where the injection moldings happen, we can have that discussion too.
Mud flats.
Lots of Ford parts are from Japan.
Or Mexico.
I
Or
can-
Mexico.
I can point you to the plants where they're
That's
they're
absolutely.
stamping
Mexico,
all that.
Ford.
Okay. Next is the expenditure for SRF loan management.
Sure, and this is related to the next segment of the pond bank, and that's Corbett Aldi Guardian Resource Management. Petrobras has a contract to do construction management and construction observation. However, that contract does not include any of the SRF function. And the big part of this is having Guardian in there, is that's really all they do. But they come out and do the Davis-Bacon wage surveys on a monthly basis, which is required. He also audits our files and helps us send those documents to SRF and make sure that everything is ready for an audit. And he's at $2,100 a month. He had in here a 12-month contract. Typically, we won't use him any more than about 4 to 5 months. And he will also be here on the 15th to talk about SRF funding options and other financing options, which he also is involved with.
So if we only use him for the 4 months, that's
It's
all
per
we'll
month.
end up paying?
Yeah.
It's, okay.
Yeah,
Motion to-
we used him last time around, and even though we had for a period, he stopped billing right then when he finished the work, and we submitted a request for reimbursement.
This is a real Achilles heel, that you can have perfect construction and perfect everything.
This is a no-brainer.
And you've gotta have somebody like this to get through that paperwork.
So
I
you make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the
And I'll
motion to
second.
approve.
Okay, got a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
P-PAC report. Attachment to the P-PAC report.
I don't think the Film Easy feedback, you've got the written report, there are 2 requests in it. We'd like your approval on. The first is for what we would call emergency spending. Every once in a while, we get in these positions where we have to spend some money, and it may occur long before we have a P-PAC meeting. And what this does is, and with advice of council, allows the chairman or vice chairman of the chairperson of the P-PAC to approve expenditures up to $10,000 in working with district manager on that. It's just, I found myself in a couple of nervous positions kind of approving these things, and I'd just like to get your official approval of that procedure.
Bill?
I'll move approval.
Well, it is stated, let me read it. P-PAC recommends that the GSCDD board authorize the chairperson or in his or her absence, the vice chairperson of the P-PAC with the concurrence of the district manager to approve expenditures of up to $10,000 in such emergency situations.
And this is the 002 account.
Huh?
002.
Oh, to account, oh, absolutely, yes.
And emergency
Well,
situation like,
like,
give me an example.
equipment goes down. We've had these things where all of a sudden equipment at the gate goes down, our camera system went out. We needed a repair, and you can't wait for 3 weeks for a P-PAC meeting to do it. Tony,
As long as Chris is listening.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Stop.
Madam Chairman, and Mr. Guy's motion, what I would suggest is that the board authorize the preparation of a resolution, to bring back at the November 15th meeting,
Okay.
incorporating this, the request by P-PAC that is put forth in the motion by Mr. Guy.
And that covers their part too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's in conjunction with, Mr. Shoemaker, right? I mean,
Yes.
Yes, yes,
And
yes,
if
that
coun-
would be in conjunction with, working with Chris to approve it.
And it comes back to P-PAC, and I mean, it's comparable to the authority that the manager has
Yeah.
vis-à-vis the board and expenditures. The reason I say in a resolution format, I would suggest, just so we have that paper trail in the record, so we don't have to worry about it.
I couldn't agree more. I'm delighted to hear you say that. I think that, we operate by the seat of our pants on too much of this stuff, and I like to have a paper trail
Yes.
that's well thought out.
And that was my concern, that we run into these situations.
What I would suggest might be the appropriate motion is that the district council be authorized to prepare a resolution to adopt the P-PAC recommendation with regards to emergency expenditures and bring that resolution back to the next board meeting.
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed?
And Phil and I had some communication, and
We
I
had some,
appreciate our
we had
conversation
some
on that point.
communication about it. The other one is, under, if you've got the report, under Cypress Grove Landscaping, our wonderful friends at Lennar left us really stuck out there with bad-looking landscaping. We are gonna have to spend some money, in order to put it back together.
Is this in the budget?
Hmm?
Is this 41,000 in the budget?
Yeah, we have the funds for it, yes. And actually, it turns out that through the diligent work of a couple of our people, the number is now down to slightly under $37,000, the final bid. In fact, they got $13,000 knocked off the original bid. They worked with the extension service, and we're putting in stuff that should last and look nice. So we just like your approval to make this expenditure.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Got your name?
Unless you have any questions, thank you very much.
How are we with the, I didn't, I think I must have missed this, the Pareto sidewalk construction, is that moving?
I would ask Mr. Schofield to.
So Joe, how?
Mr. Sidewalk.
And I think Chris might have been out
But-
when.
Yeah, and by the way, this is another situation where, and we talked, you were talking about one earlier, where Lennar, you know, is just, we're having trouble getting them to cooperate, Bob mentioned on the.
Do we have somebody inspecting this stuff on a daily, weekly, monthly basis?
Chris,
Well, I've been working with this and Joe from the very first pre-construction item, and it's turned into a real saga.
Oh, yeah.
You know, broken pipes, not informing the homeowners, not turning in bacteriological samples. Matter of fact, I reported them to the health department. And right now, they're basically saying they have the permits they need, they raised the sidewalk as they're gonna do it, now the driveways are gonna have to be adjusted. Tony, at the very beginning of this process, we gave them a right-of-way use permit to work to do the sidewalk. So they're basically saying they're working in the right-of-way, and otherwise with the residents' driveways, they're doing warranty work or working on the homes. So now for a little bit, the residents' driveways are being torn up, the sod's being torn up. They turned the residents' water off when they went to move the services. They didn't inform the people, even though we discussed it with them doing that, so the folks come out, and why is our water off? So they're without water for 2.5 hours when they're making those adjustments.
Who's our point of contact or
can I
construction
speak to this for a minute?
superintendent?
Yeah, Mr. Schofield is the expert, and he's been,
No, I mean
pushing-
Lennar's. Who's their construction supervisor or superintendent?
I can give
that.
I can give you that.
It sounds to me we need to rattle his
Can we pull
cage.
their, can we pull that,
We talked previously about suspending the authorization for the right-of-way permit. We can say, no, you can't do any more work on a right-of-way.
The only problem is they have it all torn up and getting ready for the new sidewalk, and I think that is according to permit. They've actually done a nice job on the base, with, Mr. Schofield bird dogging him out there, and I've been out there, so.
well, and we should be documenting it. I mean, we send somebody out from staff every day to do,
Whatever.
a review, a check, whatever. We bill their hours, and we either send that, to Lennar, or we put it as a potential bond item.
Or we take whatever the limit is, it's, what is it, per lot? Per lot per month? Run it to the max.
Yeah.
Oh, so.
Run it to the max.
And the
have
last thing
somebody
that
out
we
there
got
just
from
watching
them
every hour.
is the project, will be able to, will complete, the city will be able to do their required inspections. And as far as they're concerned, they are in compliance with the permit. That was October 30th.
I just, that's why I disappeared. I was talking with Tyler about this a little bit, but I had a little inside opportunity here. I go to church with the mayor of Fort Myers, and I talked to him, and I've talked to Saeed, who's the manager, and I've talked to Steve Belden, who's the manager for community development. In fact, I had a meeting with them yesterday, and they promised to look into it, but I don't really know what that permit is for. It was for a sidewalk, but now they are ripping up yards. I've asked Lennar, what are you doing for warranties? You're building something brand new, you gave these people a warranty, and what do you do now? They have a 15-foot easement that they can work in, that has not been surveyed. Tyler said, well, you can take a tape measure, be pretty accurate, and I agree with that. The fact is that water main, or the water break, they told the residents it was their problem. Basically, the CDD took care of that and billed Lennar for the water that went down the street and the service work that was done. But they, I don't believe, are following city code. This is what I've asked Saeed to look into, along with the inspector that's been out there. They're gonna finish a product and they intend to engineer it on the site as they're building it. These houses were built, the properties were improved and accepted, closed. They sold these out and never told any residents about a sidewalk, which they have known about for 2 years, but their salespeople aren't real estate agents, so they aren't required to follow state real estate laws. They can say they didn't know anything. Construction is expected to start on the first house on Monday to finish the sidewalks. The city inspector came out and inspected what they did, but he stopped them about 5 feet, 6 feet short of merging with the driveways. A brilliant thing that he did, but I'm not sure what his ultimate motive was. But we have proposed, and Tyler just confirmed with me, that rather than bringing this sidewalk across the driveway at an elevation of probably 2 to 3 inches higher than what the driveways are, they can dip the driveway down, or dip the sidewalk down to meet the pavers. Now, the pavers do have to be re-leveled because there is a side-to-side requirement by ADA of 2 degrees. But there's no regulation on how it slopes into it. And I took pictures over at the Cancer Center over in Colonial, which is brand new, met all the city codes, and I got a 4-degree slope based on my crude calculations and trig. And I've sent that to Lennar twice. I sent that to the city the other day. And the contention is they could probably save themselves money by sloping down to meet the driveways and then just leveling the driveways to be that 2-degree compliance. They're choosing to go above everything and raise it. So the question now is, there's no certified drawings, there's no PE involved. As you mentioned earlier, they should have drawings. There's nothing. And the fellow that's now running it from Lennar, his name is Chris, C-R-I-S, by the way, Chris, he's not related to you. He's basically told me, we'll engineer it on the spot, we'll let the contractor do it. And I don't see how the city can approve that. I don't see how an inspector can come out and say, yeah, I approve it without having a drawing in front of them to see that it meets a spec. So I would urge you to do as much as you can, but quickly at this point. And if you mention it to, if you can call the city up. Saeed has the permit number. I can give that all to you, but this is just a run amok project, typical of Lennar. They're just going to cram it down everybody's throat, get it done, and walk away, and then you own it.
It's a repeat of Hampton Park. Repeat.
Well, Madam Chairman, what I would suggest is that if the description of the sidewalks, if it's gonna be higher than the driveway, then you have a drop off, which makes the sidewalk non-compliant from an ADA perspective, becomes a trip hazard. And I think that's awfully bizarre. that they would
Well,
create
no.
and then what I would suggest is that the sidewalks within the district right of way is what it sounds like. We issued a right of way permit, and we need to demand of Lennar to decide to give us those plans as to what the sidewalk's going to look like in the in the right of way, particularly where it gets to the sidewalks, we don't have that height differential, grade differential, so we don't end up having to put cones around sidewalks while we fix and replace it, and, or defend claims for somebody tripping and falling on the sidewalk.
Well, Tony, they're gonna raise the driveways up to be flush with the sidewalk they're putting in. Well, they're gonna raise the pavers up to be flush with the sidewalk, so they can go straight down without. And the sidewalk has to be level this way to ADA
What I'm saying is,
compliance.
the work is in our right of way.
Yes.
And so I think we have the ability to control or demand that they comply with all codes and give us plans as to what work they're doing in our right of way. So I think at a minimum, so they don't do it on the fly.
So-
Or not accept for
and
asphalt.
let me ask the question, what is their explanation, or have they given an explanation as to why the sidewalks weren't built at the same level as the existing driveways?
I don't know, but unfortunately, our engineer approved those drawings. So when we talked to them, they say the engineer that did it, RWA, and Tyler and his group approved them. But the fact was, when they were built, those drawings were made, there were no houses on the property. I told Lennar, if you had been smart, and the guy didn't like that comment, but I said if you'd have been smart, you would have elevated everything properly so that if the city finally forced them to put this sidewalk in, you'd have had everything ready to go. The infrastructure would have been already in place, and then just pour the sidewalk and be flush with the driveways and you walk away from it. It would have been a simple thing for them to have done. No planning. When we had our pre-construction meeting, we asked them about the trees that were in the way. And Lennar's comment was, the trees? Well, they ended up, they couldn't even plant them in the front yard. They moved them to the backyards because of all the city codes. They were going to interfere with infrastructure too close to the house, too close to the sideway. So they moved these canopy trees to the backyard. Everything has been done as they go. There is no drawing. The drawing that exists is strictly a sidewalk on an open lot. No houses were there. And these people, the houses were built while this was all in contention. The owners bought these houses. Some of them asked, will I have a sidewalk? The answer was no. And now they were told for next week, don't block driveways, park your cars somewhere else, because we're going to rip your driveway up. It's just not right, and they just roll over us, you, and these residents, and they just don't care. I would tell the people, but I wouldn't be politically correct. I'd say park your cars in the driveway on Monday and leave them there. I did park my car right behind the cement truck about 2 feet, and I just hoped the guy wasn't gonna go shh.
This is Prado and Pistoia.
Prado, right where the construction road and Prado meet. There's 4 houses there. The city did, somehow the sidewalk was never in the original design. The city came back and told Lennar, or told WCI, you need to put a sidewalk there, and that's the only area it can be put in. So Lennar fought this for 2 years, and finally, the permit that they have expires. They have a deadline. If they get the sidewalk in, the city approves it, the permit extends another 6 months. If that permit doesn't extend, they can't work in that part of Prado. You know, they don't really care about us, they just care about extending that permit. So I've pushed every button I can, and at this point, you're the last button.
Take them to the limit on the inspection fee.
Well, and what I'll do too is send that demand letter to them and ask them for the plans because of the permit that was issued and see if that'll work.
Chris, yeah, actually, you should have an email that has that fella Chris's last name and all his contact.
Yeah, it's Nuremberg.
Yeah, Nuremberg. They're all bigger than me. I'm not gonna fight them. They're all 6'3" to me.
Thank you. Supervisor comments, I'll start with Ed.
Only one I have is Tony sent out to, I think, all of us, earlier today, some election sign details from 2014.
I don't know if I sent out to everybody, but if
Oh, I thought
2014.
you put in there, board members read it, so I assumed it was plural.
I was gonna say, I didn't see it.
Oh.
But anyway, the issue is that, Dave Caldwell, had asked to see a copy of a allowance or a, approval, for lack of a better term, of the board's position that we could put, election signs on CDD-owned rights-of-way, and we've been doing that. And so I just said, Chris, send him a copy that says that the board authorized that to be done. And then, I don't know how you got involved, but you came back with a 2014, I think it was, 2014 motion of the board, or a letter of the board that came from Scott Connell and Cal T, yeah, November 14, 2014, that goes through, I couldn't find any action of the board ever doing anything on this, but a lot of, you can't do this, you can't do that, basically what boils down to be just the opposite, a complete prohibition of any signs in Gateway. And my deal is who's on first?
What happened was back in 2014, there was a discussion, and I think the minutes of November 20th, I think, is actually when it happened. There was a discussion about, here's been our historic practice on signs, and what do we want to do? And the memorandum that came, and Chris asked the question, can I issue this a letter of no objection, or should be a board action? I said, suggest the board, because at that time, there was a sign policy verification was the business item. And Cal, requested direction from the board on what they want to include in a sign policy, and there's discussion, we can print it out pretty quickly. And the policy is to make sure that any signs in the right of way be removed unless approved by the board. And that was business signs, political signs, any signs. And so that's why when Chris said, should I write the letter of no objection to the board, I said, I suggest, only the board can provide that approval under that policy.
Because I had thought that basically during the election season, if it was CDD property, people could put signs up. I don't
That
think
was
we
my
ever
understanding
object,
also.
I don't ever remember the board objecting to
That was
that
my
if it was on CDD property.
That's correct.
As long as they were taken up after the election.
That's
Right.
You mentioned
That's
that.
what I
So for clarification, then I think that Chris can then send an email to Castle saying it's okay. Well, I think it was Miss Lynn Scott one,
Yeah.
it was an issue.
Because before, of course,
I think
everything
Bill
on
got involved
Gateway
too.
Boulevard
Yeah.
was CDD
Correct.
property. So now we've run into the issue
Yeah,
of
that
now
is
it's
a
Lee County.
that is a prohibition, yeah.
It's Lee
So
County.
that's how, and I apologize, again, the comment about the board was suggested the board provide that direction, just to make sure if there's gonna be any deviation.
I think that's
That's the only question I have.
Mr. Banks.
Yeah, so I'd like for the board to be thinking about a couple things. One, I think it was, I haven't talked to staff, but I think it was probably a good idea to have Pelican Ponds get involved in some of this work, because, within the Ponds group, as their committee's done a ton of work, and it sounds like they've been able to take care of things in their own community at reasonable cost, so I appreciate the Ponds group getting involved. What I want the board to consider is that utilization of committees. Other HOAs leverage different committees. I mean, I revert back to Pelican just because they've got multiple committees, and they seem to execute really well. I think it's something we should be doing more of as the district, is pulling in subject matter experts or those people that want to, volunteer their time to sit on some of these committees. Again, it needs to make sure it has a purpose and that there's a value there. But one of the things that I would recommend is either, and again, no action today, I just want us thinking about this as we, roll into our new year, is either having the vice chair kind of oversee committees and work with staff, or align board members to certain functional areas and align those two committees. So a good example would be like the Ponds Committee. I know we used to have a Water Advisory Committee. We used to have a Traffic Committee, a Parks and Rec Committee, with conversation even about potential expansion of our parks, and some feedback that we should have more programs for all Gateway residents. It's something I think we should investigate. So the idea is either let's think about how we can create valued, high-impact committees and how we align them to the board. So that's just something I wanted you to chew on. Speaking to the cons, and the comment that I made earlier about, we need to find more cost-effective ways to do everything, on time, on budget, with a high degree of quality. One of the things that, again, we need to be thinking about as we go into our next board meeting, which we've got the workshop, that we're looking at the CIP plan, is what is our board's philosophy? What is our approach to 2019, 2020, and moving forward around assessments? I don't think that the residents are going to, I don't think it's going to be palatable for us to continue a double-digit assessment increase, moving forward. This was our second year, I think, of double-digit. I think we did a great job going from 20-some% down to 16, looking at all the things that we needed to get done and things that we did do. And if you look at, if you're looking at the meeting book and you go to the agenda page 15 and you look at all the things that we are doing and all the things that we have done, we have really made a lot of progress. And I hate to slow that momentum down, but I personally don't want us, I'm personally not in favor of another double-digit assessment increase for next year. So with that being said, we're gonna have to put a line in the sand and say, what does this board, what is our philosophy on assessment or our operating costs for next year and the year after that? Because everything that we're going to talk about in the work group, in any of our priorities, most of these are going to have to be multi-year plans. We're going to have to break these apart. So we're going to go and we're going to sit through this working session, and we're going to have Ed and staff talk about all these things that we need to do, and there's going to be dollars associated to it. And we've got to pay for that. We can talk about different funding sources, and I think we've been very successful, but it still has to be paid for. So we need to be ready to walk into our next board meeting with us individually saying, we're either going to maintain a flat assessment for next year, that's what we're going to try to do, or come as close as possible, or we're all comfortable with another double-digit assessment increase, because until we can make that unilateral decision, it's going to be very difficult for us to build a 2019 plan or a 3-year or 5-year plan, because that money's got to come from somewhere. And how we fund it, there's only so much available dollars. We either have to look at revenue increases if we want to offset assessments, or our reserves, which is, I think most of us would agree that there is some available funds there, but that'll run out pretty quickly. So again, going into the next meeting, I think we need to be thinking about what is our personal ideology on assessments for next year and years to come, because we're going to have to probably make some really tough decisions. If we want to do all the things we want to do, we're either going to have to break them apart or cut back a little bit. So we just need to be thinking about these. We can't do it all, and we can't do it all in 1 year. And if we stretch it out to 5 or 10 years, we just have to be very comfortable with the potential impacts. We have to think about prioritization, whether it's severity and impact to our residents. So I just wanted to throw that out there going into our next board meeting. Because one of the things we're going to have to do, another thing too in that regard, and Ed brought up the issue with Gateway Greens, we also have to be in a position through our prioritization reviews where, like the sewer cleaning, for example, we've got surveys that are 4 years old, and we've had some pretty significant storms. We may find that that something on our list needs to be bumped up. So, for example, Ed, if that area that you're talking about falls within that high priority, well, we need to reprioritize. We may need to put them on that list, which means we need to bump someone or figure out how we can fund it. So these are the types of conversations that we really need to be capable of having in our prioritization and approval process. So that's it for me.
Another thing that I'm gonna go ahead and work down the list, and I'm gonna take myself next, and then I'll move to Mr. Guy. I would like for the board to consider, I'm not asking for action tonight, but I would like to bring this forward on a probably the December agenda, that one meeting we're having. We really need to consider increasing the amount that Mr. Shoemaker can approve. $10,000 is a really low amount, and I think a lot of things that need to be, they're in the budget, they're budgeted, but they're having to be brought to the board for approval because they're over that 10,000, they're 11,000 or 12,000, yet they're in the budget. We already know they're gonna be needed, they've been placed in the budget, but his hands are kind of tied because we've limited the dollar amount that he can approve. So I'd like to think about.
I thought the approval was for new work that wasn't in the budget.
We've been approving everything, so.
If we've got a $50,000 item for a pump, and it's in the budget and identified for a pump, I don't understand why
He's
staff
not free
can't
pump.
even need to bring that back, other than the fact, at the next meeting, we be told it's been done.
Yeah.
So that we have a running deal. But
And-
as far as new work, that's another story.
And-
Or if it exceeds the budgeted amount.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I agree with you, but I think that we need to let Chris know we're comfortable with that. If it's budgeted, it's in the budget, and it's an expenditure that you were planning on, that doesn't have to come back to the board for approval.
Yeah, and along those lines, then we need to, as part of that December discussion, revisit the resolution at that time.
Yeah, I would really like to revisit the resolution so that, I think I feel like his hands are tied sometimes, that he feels like he has to bring things to the board that are in the budget, and I just wanna make it clear, make that resolution clear.
I think there's
That's
no
all.
reason for
We
that.
can do that while we bust our butts putting together the
Well,
budget.
and I mean,
Right,
ultimately,
exactly.
Chris should have P&L responsibility, so if it's within the budget, it's his job to manage the budget.
Correct.
If he even finds something, hey, I'm gonna pull $20,000 from here because I'm gonna degrade the priority, and I'd like to leverage it over here. Now, bring
That's
that
gotta
back,
come back.
but he can shuffle
But
around.
But within the budget,
No.
it's just a waste of time. in my
Yeah,
opinion.
absolutely.
Mr. Guy?
I've been looking at my calendar, trying to figure out if there's a way that we can have a meeting later in November, because we're gonna be really, jam-packed on the
Well,
15th.
we need to talk about that November 15th meeting, moving it up, because I agree with you, we're not gonna get that done starting at 2 o'clock. We need to all start at 1 o'clock.
And either that, or we need to try and move the 15th meeting back later in the month.
Well,
And get away from,
Well,
if you can stay
Tony
away from
brought up that
Thanksgiving.
problem we got on that, because we got that, what was it, 60-day clock working on us
That's
on
what-
the
that's-
amendment rule.
But is that for all work groups or?
Budget.
Oh, no, we're talking about something
Budget.
else.
That's your
Budget.
assessment. To change your budget, what he was saying is 60 days, and that 60 days, I don't know how far back in November.
Well, I was thinking about breaking the
Or have another meeting in November.
yeah, I was thinking about pulling the
That might be the
the
answer.
workshop out of the board meeting and do it, the week in advance.
Well, right now, everybody's set, all the professionals are set for the 15th, as I
Right.
understand it.
Yeah.
So what we might be able to do is to pull out some of the stuff that would normally be at the meeting on the 15th and move it back to the, can't be 22nd, that's Thanksgiving, 29th, or something like that.
Yeah, we only have one meeting
In
scheduled for
December.
December, so we could have 3 in November if you wanna try and do it that way.
Yeah, and with the board, if the board decides today to have the 29th, then we convey that to Infomark so they can advertise that, because it's outside the cycle. So, we meet the 10-day advertisement.
That plate agenda for that meeting on the 15th is full. Flat,
With the
full,
capital.
with all the stuff we've got to go over.
Well, and remember that, I'd like to just remind you that you're right, the 15th is full. If we do one the 29th, then the next meeting is a week later on the 6th. So if there's things that we want to pull, I don't think the 6th meeting is that backed up. Why don't we just move them to the 6th and not have an extra meeting? Because it's gonna be really hard for staff. You got Thanksgiving, then you got a meeting, and then a week later you got another meeting.
So what you're saying is isn't that important on the 15th, move it to the 6th?
Yes,
Makes sense.
so we'll work on that. We'll work on the scheduling and pull some stuff off the 15th agenda. and move it to the December 6th meeting.
And a start time for the workshop, do you wanna move it up or leave it at a regular 3
You've got one
o'clock?
heck of a lot of professionals coming with a lot of stuff to talk about. I just don't know how you're gonna get all that done if you just go to 2 o'clock. Unless we can pull a lot of the stuff and move it to the 6th, and then have
Additional
from
time.
2 o'clock to 5 o'clock or 5:30 to go over all that, those items.
And I think we can do that. I think we can work with the schedule
Okay,
and
we'll
get it.
What-
have to advertise that because it'll
What's
change.
coming
Yeah,
up?
thank you. Chris read my mind on that. We moved up to 2. We need to advertise for the change in time.
If you wanna move it to 1, I'll leave that to the rest of the board. I don't have a problem whether it's 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock.
I can make it work.
1 o'clock on the 15th?
And then we can maybe get around that.
Yeah.
And not move it to the 6th.
Tony, do we have to have the budget amendment done by end of November?
Within 60 days of the end of the fiscal year, so that would place in November
No,
29th.
wait, let me
Yes.
finish. If we moved into December or January, are you telling me that we cannot make any further budget amendments on the fiscal 19 budget?
Well, in last year's budget, I'm talking, we're amending last year's budget, right?
No, this is amending this year's budget.
Oh, okay, I thought
It's
we were
the
amending.
carry forward.
Okay,
This is the
that's
carry
different. Okay, that's different. I thought you were amending last year's budget.
No,
So
we don't
17-18.
really need to do anything.
Okay, the
if
18-19
we're
is different then, okay.
Voila.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So we buy some time.
carrying.
Yeah.
I apologize, I misunderstood.
Yeah, I thought we were talking
Well, that
about
was-
the budget.
Thank you, Mr.
That
Guy.
was worth
It
discussing.
was.
Um,
Anything else?
Well,
I think I'll shut my mouth while I'm ahead.
That's we call that a mic drop.
Will we
Bill.
have that final year end, or, not the final, but a number close enough that you'd asked about earlier of Stephen telling us what the 2018
Carryover.
wrap-up looks like?
Yeah, and I've had requests from several sources for the year end.
Yeah, we need to wrap that up.
We
I mean,
really need that.
Well, that's what has to be done within 60 days, the 17-18 budget amendment reconcile.
And I'll find out tomorrow.
Those
He said-
two things go hand in hand. If we're gonna redo the fiscal 18, he's gotta know what that number is.
So
Did you get that revised deal that the board asked me to do the last time out to all the board members
Yes.
that I sent you? They've all got it now?
It'll be in the agenda package also. for the
Do
15th.
you want a motion to change the time of the 15th meeting to 1 p.m.?
yes,
I
if
should-
everybody's okay with that,
You okay
we'll
with
move
that?
it to 1.
Doug?
Yeah, I'm fine.
I so move.
I second that motion.
Third.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Everybody's in agreement. 1 p.m. on the 15th. I just need to remind myself. On the 14th. Mrs. Flaherty,
I just have 2 questions.
go right ahead.
One for Mr. Kraft. How are we on the website to,
It's gonna be in the workshop. He's calling it as well.
Okay. And I've been approached when I've been at the pool, Mr. Shoemaker. One card is given per family to get into that, Gateway Common Pools, okay? And it was suggested by one of the members that was there, because they only have 1 card. If there's a chance of getting a second card, they are willing to pay for a second card. Is there any way we can look into that?
I don't think it's just something they've probably done for years.
I have a family of 6.
Yeah.
One card's impossible. to keep
One
track
card's
of.
lost in.
You get one.
So maybe you can bring up some kind of, what the price would be for any.
With tracking.
Might include hopping the fence.
That's-
60 cents.
Okay, so I'm just thinking that, maybe $5 would be a good price for extra card. They need, does that make sense?
There's 3 or 3.
So, or just come back with something
Sure.
so they can do
You
that.
can change that internally.
Okay, thank you.
As long as they're not giving it to friends, they're only using it for family.
Well, that's why they said they have to pay for it too. That might be a good motivation, make sure that it's only within family.
And if it's a pool card.
Anything else, Mrs.
No,
Flaherty?
that was the only 2 things I had.
With that in mind, I call this meeting adjourned, and it
Aye.
is 5:22.